buat dekat laptop, bila saya dah download Microsoft Teams tu, bila saya klik dia loading, dia keluar tab baru. And then dia keep keluar tab baru macam kena virus tu. So saya minta maaf lah, sepatutnya saya test awal-awal sebab saya tu dah test awal-awal guna guna handphone, saya ingat mudah saja, tapi bila guna laptop dia tak jadi pula ya. Sebab apa kita nak beralih ke Microsoft Teams ni sebab kita boleh record kita punya kelas kan. So nanti dia boleh gunakan sebagai awak punya rujukan. And then satu lagi tadi saya lupa nak bagi tahu. 2 minggu lepas kami ada audit, internal audit. And then the auditor tengok kita punya course outline, we have quizzes, we have presentations and we have assignments. Presentations ada S, assignment ada S. So saya bagi assignment satu, Dr. Fahmi bagi presentations. Dia kata mana lagi satu? Auditor kata. So saya explain, Dr. Fahmi explains lah, biasanya kita bagi assignment satu, presentation satu, quiz saya bagi 2, Dr. Fahmi bagi 2, and then we have 5 lab. If we give students 2 presentations and 2 assignments, that will be too much for 3 credit hour. But the auditor say that in course outline, the course outline clearly say that presentations with S and assignments with S. So we have to give you 2 assignments at least and 2 presentations. So I discussed with Dr. Fahmi. Saya berbincang dengan Dr. Fahmi. Dr. Fahmi cakap kita bagi je lah 2 assignments, 2 presentations. Tapi saya tak setuju sebab it is a technical error kan. Just mistakenly put S dekat assignments and presentations doesn't mean we have to give you at least 2 assignments, 2 presentations, because you know that the assignments, the lab report, presentations will be based on credit hour. Kan? Kita ada self study, guided learning. So based on that, supposedly you only have to do 1 presentation and 1 assignments. Saya still tak nak bagi awak 2 assignments, 2 presentations. Tengok nanti Dr. Fahmi bagi awak ke tak. Cuma saya assignments tu kita ubah kepada mini projects. Okay, we will start mini project at week 5. Next week we will start our lab sessions. Okay, itu satu. And then biasanya semasa bukan face to face class lah, online class saya buat sebagai contoh, kalau dalam satu lecture tu ada 3 atau 4 topik, saya buatlah quiz kahot, bukan quiz lah, just for fun. Okay, saya buat kahot sebab bila saya tanya student soalan, student senyap saja. And then the last batch they were very active, so saya tak buatlah kahot tu. Tapi batch awal ni macam senyap je, kenapa ya? Saya minggu depan saya nak buat macam tu lah. Saya nak buat kahot, kita buat macam quiz. Siapa menang, mintalah rakan-rakan awak yang lain tu belanja. Boleh tak macam tu? Sebab senyap saja semua.
Okay.
Boleh?
Boleh doktor.
Okay. Itu cadangan saya tak apa. Okay. So let us continue with our topic. Okay. So kita baru start untuk topik untuk minggu kedua. Okay. So on first week we have discussed about essentials nutrients for plant nutrition, and apart from that we also have discussed about beneficial elements. Okay, what is the difference between essentials elements and beneficial elements? Essentials elements, they share 4 distinctive characteristics. Okay, but for beneficial element, their main characteristic is they are not required by all species of plant, but they are required by certain species of plant. If these elements supply to that specific species of plant, the plant will show higher growth and also higher yields. Okay, itu dia punya perbezaan antara essentials elements and beneficial elements. We will not discuss about carbon, hydrogen, and oxygens. Okay, for plant nutrition, these three elements usually will not become a problem for plant growth and also to produce higher yields. The problems usually happens for macronutrients and also micronutrients because plant growth, the mediums for plant growth is soil. The soil also is where the plants acquire their elements or nutrients, especially for minerals, nutrients. Okay, so for second week, we will discuss about primary macronutrients. There are three elements in primary macronutrients, which are nitrogens, phosphorus, and also potassiums. Before we begin our topics and discussions or lecture for today, I want to ask you if you still remember. Nitrogens are available for plant uptake in two forms, two different forms. Okay. Phosphorus also, even though they are phosphorus also available for plant nutrition in two different forms. For potassiums, they are available form for plant uptakes only one forms. Okay, one physical chemical conditions. What are they if you still remember? Nitrogens are available for plant nutrient uptake in the form of podium.
Nitrate and
Nitrate.
ammonium.
Nitrate.
Ammonium.
Ammoniums. Phosphorus,
Phosphate.
okay.
Phosphate.
Phosphates or orthophosphates. Okay, there are two different of phosphates. Okay, dia ada 2 plus dengan apa saya tak ingat. Okay, depend on the acidity of the soils. For potassiums,
Potassium
okay,
ion.
potassium ion. Okay, plus. So for second lecture, I will divide today's lecture into 4 different parts or 4 different topics, which are functions of primary macronutrients in plant physiology. Okay, and then continue with physicochemical properties of primary macronutrients element in soil, and then the third topic, uptake and assimilations of macronutrients, and the last one, the deficiency symptoms. Okay, so let us continue with first topic, which is functions of primary macronutrients in plant physiology. So primary macronutrients are elements that required by plant in large amount, okay, relatively to other elements or compared to other uh, mineral elements in plants nutrition. Okay, so how large they required by plant compared to secondary macronutrients or micronutrients, higher than 0.1 at 0.5%. Okay, if their concentration in plant tissue is 0.5, they call primary macronutrients. And scientists have done chemical analysis and found these three elements, uh, except carbon, hydrogen, and oxygens, are grouped as primary macronutrients. They are nitrogen, phosphorus, and also potassiums. Apart from that, these three elements likely to be found limiting plant growth and development, okay, in soil systems. Okay, so if we want to produce optimum growth or optimum yields, these three elements are the key features or the key factors. Okay, kalau awak nak hasilkan sayur yang optimum dia punya tumbuh seran ataupun optimum dia punya yields, we have to supply adequate of these three elements. Okay, so first functions of nitrogens in plant physiology is as a um, kita panggil apa? Constituents in importance part of plant compounds. Okay, so nitrogens is important chemicals, a part of chemical structure of amino acids, nucleotide, chlorophylls, ATP, and many secondary metabolite. Okay, um, amino acids. Okay, for example, this is amino acids. We have two carbons. Okay, we have hydroxyl atoms, molecules, hydrogens, and also NH. Okay, this is amines. Amines group of amino acids. Amine groups of amino acid contains nitrogens. Okay, so this is the parent structure of amino acids. R is side chains. It could be a different R chains will determines the names of amino acids. Okay. Um, Apart from that, nitrogen also is important component of chlorophylls. Okay, so this is uh, uh, chlorophyll structure. Okay, kalau awak tengok structure yang seperti uh, apa ni? Saya tak tandakan lah. Kita ada magnesiums at the center, and then we have nitrogens binding to the magnesiums, and then we have the carbons. Okay, uh, uh, dia panggil apa bentuk dia ni, the cyclic carbons ni. If kalau awak tengok kita punya red blood cell, kita ada hemoglobins. Okay, the structure of hemoglobins, this structure is we call heme structure. Okay, uh, structure ni adalah sama macam hemoglobins. Okay, tapi yang membezakan dia apa? The side chains. And then bahagian kedua yang membezakan hemoglobin dekat kita punya red blood cell adalah this part. Okay, magnesiums. Kalau dekat chlorophylls, the center atoms is magnesiums, but in our red blood cell, the center atoms is ions. Okay, for oxygen binding. Okay, so this is chlorophylls where the photosynthesis process happen in plant leaf. Okay, apart from that, nitrogen is important structure of ATP. Okay, so ATP, what is the functions of ATP in biochemical process? ATP is a structure that contains high energy. Okay, so the biochemical process that require energy, usually the energy will derive from this ATP. Okay, the detachments, okay, the relations of kita panggil apa ni, the phosphorus, the phosphate will produce very high energy. Okay, so dia biasanya kalau biochemical process yang perlukan energy, the energy will derive from ATP. Apart from that, nucleotide also contains nitrogens. Okay, for example, adenines, guanines, cytosines, thymines, all structure of this nucleic acid contains nitrogens. Okay, and then apart from that, nitrogens also is important components in secondary metabolites. Okay, for example, in terpenes, alkaloids, apa lagi? Glucosides. Okay, a lot of secondary metabolite contains nitrogens. Okay, so if you want to produce optimum growth, okay, kalau awak pergi kedai baja, biasanya kita akan cakap kita nak baja daun. Okay, kalau awak pergi nursery ataupun kedai baja, awak nak beli baja, orang tu tanya baja apa, baja daun atau baja akar, baja buah, kita cakap baja daun. Okay, so kalau awak tengok dia cakap ini adalah baja daun. Okay, kalau baja daun awak tengok dia punya the concentrations or the ratio of nitrogen in that fertilizer is very high. Okay, why? Because kita baja daun. Okay, so kalau kita cakap daun, apa yang kita boleh kaitkan? Chlorophylls kan? Kat daun ada chlorophylls. Okay, So if we supply adequate nitrogens, it will grow healthily. It will produce uh, uh, banyak daun sebab kita supply with adequate nitrogens. Nitrogens is required for chlorophyll synthesis. Okay. Phosphorus. Phosphorus also uh, uh, important components of not nucleotide actually. Okay. Kita panggil apa? Uh, kita panggil apa? In our DNA. Okay. Nucleic acid in our DNA. Okay. Because our this is sugar. Okay. Ini bukan sugar. Ini adalah nucleic. Ini adalah bukan nucleotide nucleic acid. Okay. Sebab apa? Dia ini adalah nucleotide. Nanti dia akan, kalau nucleic acid dia ada 5 carbon sugar. Okay, dia ada phosphate groups. Okay, so that's why in nucleic acid ini adalah saya terkeliru dengan nucleotide dengan nucleic acids. Okay, this is nucleotide. Adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine is nucleotide. Nucleotide doesn't contain any phosphorus. Okay, it doesn't contain any phosphorus. But nucleic acid contain phosphorus because in nucleic acid it contains 5 carbon sugar, and then this is base. Okay, this is the base, and then kita ada 5 carbon sugar, and then kita ada phosphate groups. Okay, so that's why phosphorus is important part of nucleic acid. Apart from that, phosphorus contains ATP. Okay, so tadi saya tersilap ATP ini adalah bahagian nitrogens. Okay, yang saya cakap tadi produce energy adalah dekat bahagian phosphorus. Okay, ATP contain 3 phosphorus. The detachments of the last phosphorus will produce very high energy. Okay, and then cell membranes, if you still remember, sama tersilap ini adalah untuk nitrogen tadi. Sepatutnya dia ada gambar yang sebelah kanan ni, gambar yang lain ya. Saya edit, saya gunakan template yang baru, so saya maybe teredit. Saya tak copy paste sekali structure ATP, nucleic acid dengan juga cell membranes. Okay, so if you still remember our nuclear membranes, okay, plasma membranes. Okay, this is our plasma membranes. We have bilayer plasma membranes. The outer layer, okay, this is outer layer. The head components, it is hydrophilic. Okay, it contain phosphorus. Okay, phosphorus. That's why it produce hydrophilic characteristic. Dekat bahagian echo ni dia adalah hydrocarbons. Okay, hydrocarbons dia tak larut dalam air. Okay, so phosphorus adalah penting untuk plasma membranes. The characteristic of dewilipid plasma membranes kan. Dia ada hydrophobic dengan hydrophilic. Dekat hydrophilic tu dia ada bahagian phosphate. Okay. And then phosphorus also crucial or vital for plant growth and involved in several key plant functions such as root developments, flower initiations, fruit and seeds developments. Okay, so remember what I said earlier. If you go to a nursery or fertilizer shops, you said you want a leaf fertilizer, so you must buy fertilizer that contains high amount or high ratio of nitrogens. But if you want to initiate flowering or fruitings for plants, awak akan cakap saya nak baja buah atau baja akar. Okay, for fruitings fertilizer or flowering fertilizer, the fertilizer will contains higher ratio of phosphorus. Why? Sebab apa? Sebab apa? Hmm, Mas Rizal, sebab apa Mas Rizal? Awak ni ada lagi tak ni? Oh ada. Mas Rizal tak ada? Siapa ya? Iklimah? Agak-agak kenapa? Awak boleh kaitkan tak fungsi fosforus dengan dia punya fisiologi? Okay, kalau awak pergi kedai nursery, kita nak baja buah atau baja akar, kita cakap dia akan bagi baja yang contain high phosphorus. Why? Sebab apa ya?
Sebab itulah dia vital untuk fruit and seed development tu.
Yes, yelah. Sebab apa phosphorus vital for fruit of flowering? Sebab apa? Awak boleh kaitkan tak fungsi dia? Sebab apa? Saya sesekali kena panggil nama sebab dekat skrin komputer saya hanya ada saya nampak slide. Pernah satu lecture tu saya cakap hampir setengah jam. Rupanya saya dah disconnect daripada Google Meet. So saya cakap seorang-seorang je sebenarnya.
Sebab phosphorus tu dia komponen dalam sel membran juga. Jadi bila nak macam nak grow tu, dia akan divide tisu-tisu tu. Maksudnya divide plant cell tu
Ya,
lah kan.
betul. Bagus Iklimah. So that's why if you want to produce, if you want to induce fruitings or root developments or flowerings, you must supply high amount of phosphorus. Okay, high amount ratio of phosphorus doesn't mean you apply phosphorus only. You must supply also nitrogens, potassium, and also phosphorus. But the, these three combinations of elements must contains higher ratio of phosphorus for flowerings, fruitings, or root developments. Why? Because phosphorus is crucial for uh, developments of cell membranes. Okay, kalau kita nak induce pokok tu untuk akar lebih banyak, okay, ataupun fruitings, dia mesti undergo cell divisions, kan? So cell divisions dia mesti ada apa, sel-sel, the volumes of cells, the mass of cells meningkat. Okay, salah satu komponen cells tu yang penting adalah plasma membranes. Okay, so komponen yang penting dalam plasma membranes apart from carbon, hydrogens, oxygens, it contains phosphorus. Okay, sebab tu bila kita nak induce fruiting, rooting, flowering, we must supply higher ratio of phosphorus. Okay, thank you Iklimah. Apart from that, ini bukan phosphorus, sorry. For phosphorus has many different role in plant. Okay, for example, salah satu fungsi potassium adalah activations of enzymes. Okay, enzyme activations. Nanti saya cek semula. Sepatutnya ada dalam slide ni. Okay, beza potassium dengan apa? Phosphorus dengan nitrogens. Nitrogens dia akan incorporates, okay, in compound. Okay, sebagai contoh, nitrogens dia akan dihasilkan untuk chlorophylls. Okay, maksudnya dia akan incorporated in chlorophyll structure. Ataupun kalau the nitrogen required for ATP, the nitrogen will be part of ATP molecular structure. Same goes to phosphorus. Okay, phosphorus, it will be incorporated to molecular structure of plant compound, okay, or plant tissue structure. But for potassiums, it will not be incorporated into plant compound. Okay, faham tak? Ataupun dalam erti kata yang lain, potassiums exist in plant tissue as potassium ion. Okay, dia tak incorporated into molecular structure. Okay, tapi tak ada dalam slide saya. Nanti saya check balik. Nanti saya edit semula saya punya slide. Okay, so itu kena ingat, tu juga penting. Okay, the functions of potassiums mainly in plant physiology as a enzyme activator. Okay, what is enzyme activator? So you know that enzymes have active site. Okay, what is the functions of enzymes? Enzymes usually involve to speed up biochemical process or to initiate biochemical process. Okay, for example, glucolysis, okay, ataupun starch synthesis, okay, the catabolic or synthesis of elements, okay, required enzymes, kan? So sebagai contoh, kalau enzymes yang involve dalam synthesis, dia ada dua different active sites. Okay, kalau active site ni dia akan attach with compound A, compound B, and then biochemical analysis happens. So compound A, compound B dia jadi satu compound. Okay, that is enzymes when involved in synthesis process. Enzyme also can involve in catabolic process. What is meant by catabolic process? The enzymes have active sites. Okay, the substrate will attach to the active site, and then it will produce two different molecules. That when enzymes involved in catabolic process. Okay, so basically different kan, tak kira lah apa jenis enzymes, dia mesti ada active site. Okay, active site ni adalah di mana compound akan attach and the biochemical process occur. Certain enzymes required kita panggil coenzymes or enzymes activator to expose the active sites. Okay, when the active site is exposed, the enzymes will active, and then the substrate can bind to the enzymes, and then the biochemical process can occur. This is where the potassium's role comes in. The potassium's dia apa? Dia punya fungsi dalam ATPase, nitrite reductase or starch synthesis activations enzymes. Okay, so ini adalah contoh-contoh enzymes yang perlukan potassium untuk enzim-enzim ni become active. Okay, ATPase, okay, for example, ATPase involved in proton pump and photosynthesis. Okay, kalau if you still remember in plant physiology, okay, we have proton pumps, okay, or proton potassium pump. Okay, apa yang berlaku? Kita ada carrier proteins where protons or other elements can bind to these proteins. The binding of these proteins will initiate the binding of ATP. Okay, and then ATP will dissociate of phosphorus, okay, or phosphorus at the ATP, and the ATP become ADP. Okay, so the phosphorylations of this ATP will induce conformation changes of the proteins, and then dia punya elements ni tadi dia akan, the active site dia dia akan terdedah ke bahagian dalam. Okay. So the elements boleh ditransfer daripada outer side to extracellular side. Okay. Kalau awak masih ingat lagi, proteins ni dalam bentuk tak aktif, dia terbuka sebelah sini kan. Nanti elements tu sebagai contoh protons, dia bind, dia akan induce ATP binding and phosphorylations. Jadi ADP. Okay. Bila ATP become ADP, the conformations of these proteins will change and then the active sites will expose dekat bahagian dalam. Apa jadi? Protons itu akan dibawa masuk. Okay. Selain tu, potassium also required for nitrate reductase. Okay. So catalyze the first step in reductions of nitrates to organic forms. Okay, nanti kita akan bincang secara details the functions of nitrate reductase. We know that nitrogens can be adsorbed or uptake by plant in two forms, ammoniums or nitrates. If plant take the nitrogen in the form of nitrates, the nitrate must be converted into ammoniums. Okay, there are certain enzymes involved in the reductions of nitrates to nitrates and then to ammoniums. So the nitrate is toxic to the plant tissue. It must be converted to ammoniums before it can be assimilated or incorporated into other structure in plant tissues. Okay. Start synthesis also can be activated by potassium ion. Apart from that, potassium ion, because as I mentioned earlier, potassium will not incorporated into molecular structure of plant compound. It will exist in plant tissue as potassium ions. So when potassium, because potassium exists in plant tissue in a form of ions, it can be used as plant in osmotic regulations, okay, especially in the opening and closing of stomata. Opening and closing stomata is due to osmotic pressure changes in gut cells. Okay, for example, in the night where the transpiration process lower, the stomata will open. Okay, so macam mana stomata tu boleh terbuka? First, there are potassium pumps at the plasma membranes of the gut cells. Pada waktu malam, apa yang berlaku? The potassium pumps will pump in potassium ion into the gut cells. Okay, so what happened to osmotic pressure of cytoplasms of gut cells? Apa yang berlaku? Osmotic pressure, apa yang berlaku? Osmotic pressure dia. Okay, cuba bayangkan mula-mula, okay, gut cells ni dia dalam keadaan neutral, rehat. Okay, kalau dalam keadaan rehat, in rest conditions it will shrunken. Okay, so bila plant tu dia nak induce the opening of stomata, they will pump in potassium ion into the gut cell stomata. What happens to the osmotic pressure? Apa kita panggil lah? Bukan osmotic potentials. Okay, sorry, bukan osmotic pressure. Saya tersilap. The osmotic potentials of water in plasma membranes. Jadi apa? Kalau ada solute, osmotic potentials become higher ataupun lower?
Higher. Lower.
Higher ke lower? Siapa cakap higher tadi tu?
Air masuk higher.
So bukan air. Kalau ada solute maksudnya ada sesuatu ion dan dissolve dalam water tu. The osmotic potentials become higher ataupun lower? The osmotic potentials become lower. Okay. So when the osmotic potentials become lower, what happens to the movement of water? Water will move in. Okay, water will move from higher potentials to lower osmotic potentials. Okay, apa yang akan berlaku? Air akan masuk ke dalam gut cells ni. So bila water move into gut cells, the gut cells become bloated ataupun swollen. Dia jadi membengkak, dia jadi macam kacang ni. Okay, so the stomata jadi terbuka. Okay, so kalau plant experience very high rate of transpirations, dia nak tutup stomata dia, apa yang plant lakukan? Di potassium pumps dekat plasma membranes of gut cells ni, dia akan pump out potassium ions. Okay, so the concentrations of potassium ion dekat dalam cytoplasm ni jadi rendah. Okay, so when the solute concentrations become lower, the water potentials become higher. Okay, so water will move from higher water potential to lower water potentials. So after that, water molecules will move out from the gut cells. Okay, what happens? The gut cells become shrunken. Okay, so the movement or the concentrations of potassiums in cells can be used for osmotic regulations. Okay, so any questions before we move to second part? Oh, sebelum tu saya nak bagi tahu. Kita dah nak pukul 4 ya. Rasa macam tak habis je. Tak boleh habis je. Any questions before we move to next topic? Ada soalan tak?
No, doctor.
So if again, I will remind you, I will use different textbook, okay, as a reference in our lecture. If you refer to our course outline, there are a few textbook listed in our course outline. So saya gunakan buku tu, tapi saya gunakan juga buku-buku yang lain. So kalau awak nak buku-buku tu, awak boleh check download online, ataupun kalau awak tak dapat download online, awak boleh jumpa saya akan bagi awak. Okay. Tapi kalau awak baca banyak buku, kadang-kadang lagi pening kepala. Okay. For example, different book will categorize different element as a mobile and non-mobile. Okay. Tapi saya ambil yang general lah, yang dalam semua buku mentions about that. Okay. Macam macam awak belajar agama juga kan. Ada mazhab ni kata tersentuh suami isteri batal wuduk, yang ni tak batal wuduk. Okay. So kita ambil untuk kita punya mazhab saja. Okay. Sama juga macam sains ni. Kalau kita do chemical analysis, ada nutrients yang perlu untuk pokok tu. Okay, macam silikon perlu untuk pokok padi, tapi pokok lain tak perlu. So kita tak adalah list dia dalam essentials nutrients element required by plants. Okay, so macam tu juga. Kalau awak baca banyak buku, kadang awak pening. Okay. So if there are no questions, we move to our second topics. Okay, so kita ada lagi 2 topics. Physicochemical properties of primary macronutrients element in soil. Okay, so we have phosphorus, potassiums, and also nitrogens. The physical chemicals nitrogens more complex, okay, compared to phosphorus and potassiums. Why? Because phosphorus and potassiums is metallics. Kalau tak silap lah, kalau awak rujuk in periodic tables, is categorized as metallics elements. So kalau metallic elements, dia wujud dalam tanah saja, okay, ataupun dalam air. Dia tak wujud dalam udara, kita punya udara. But for nitrogens in our nature can exist in the form of gas, inorganic, organic, or bind to metals. So the cycles or the transformations of physical chemicals of nitrogen a bit more complex compared to potassiums and also phosphorus. Okay. Um, kita akan discuss about nitrogen cycles. Okay. Um, kalau awak belajar pasal apa ya, biodiversity, nitrogen, carbons, okay, ini dia punya cycles very complex, okay, because nitrogen can exist in our terrestrials, atmosphere, and also in our water. Same goes to carbons. Kalau elemen-elemen lain tak banyak yang macam ni, okay. So it is important for you to understand about the nitrogen cycles. Okay, what is nitrogen cycle? What is the definitions of nitrogen cycles? Definitions of nitrogen cycles is biogeochemical cycles, which nitrogens can be converted or exist into multiple chemical forms as it circulate among atmosphere, terrestrials, and also marine ecosystems. Okay, the conversions of nitrogens can be carried out through both biological, physical processes. Okay, so uh, cara ringkasnya, these diagrams represents nitrogen cycles. Okay, so we will start. Kalau kita nak discuss about nitrogen cycles, usually we start with nitrogens that exist in the form of gases in our atmosphere. Why? Because huge proportions of nitrogen in our environments exist in the form of gas. Okay, in fact, 75 or 70% of our atmosphere contains nitrogens. Okay, so nitrogens can be converted from gas into different forms. Okay, kita pergi satu bahagian. Okay, we start with nitrogen fixations. Okay, this one. So nitrogen fixations can occur either biologically, environmentally, or industrially. Okay, so these three processes can convert the atmospheric nitrogens into ammonia. Okay, so when we talk about nitrogen cycles, remember nitrogen cycles mean the conversions of gases nitrogens into ammonia. So how the gases nitrogens can be converted into ammonia? There are three different processes. Okay, either through biological process, environmental process, and industrial process. Biological process is when the nitrogens in atmosphere convert into ammonia by bacteria. Okay, they are symbiotic bacteria or free living bacteria that can convert nitrogens into ammonia. Okay, apart from that, when lightning, okay, lightning will produce very high energy. Okay, so the lightning process can um, converts the nitrogen gas N2 into NH4. Okay, the nitrogen will lose uh, electrons, and then the electron uh, it will lose electrons, and then becomes chemically active. Okay, so that it can bind to for hydrogens, become ammonia. Ammonium ions, okay, bukan ammonia, and ammonia NH4, ammonium ion NH4 plus. Nitrogens also can be converted from nitrogen gas into ammonia by industrial process, Haber-Bosch process. So this process require very high energy. Okay, so this is three process that can convert nitrogen into ammonia. So kalau awak ambil concentrations plants or environments, kita akan bincang lebih details pasal biological nitrogen fixations. Okay, there are certain bacteria that can bind that can convert nitrogens into ammoniums. We call this kind of bacteria, if the bacteria can convert the nitrogen into ammonium by symbiotic process. Kita panggil that bacteria as a rhizobiums. Okay, so these rhizobiums will colonize in certain species of plants we call legumes. Okay, pokok kekacang. Kalau awak tengok pokok ladang-ladang kelapa sawit, dia akan tanam cover crops. So that cover crops is from legume species. So that there's certain reasons why in our plantations we use legumes crops to cover permukaan tanah tu. Salah satu sebab dia adalah kita tak nak weed tumbuh, okay, for weed control. And then second reasons we want to kita nak apa prevent erosions process from happens, okay, ataupun nutrients loss from environments to happens. And apart from that, why we plant legumes plant in pot plantations? Because we want to fertilize the soil. The legumes can performs or can establish symbiotic interactions with rhizobiums. Okay, kita bila legumes ni dia establish symbiotic interactions with legumes, kita tengok akar dia ada bulat-bulat macam kekacang. Okay, tapi dalam akar tu sebenarnya tak ada kekacang, tapi dia ada bacteria colony. Okay, rhizobiums, kita panggil bacteria tu rhizobiums. Okay, so these interactions is symbiotic interactions. When we call or we say in symbiotic interactions, both party will benefit. Okay, the plant will get benefits and then the bacteria also will get benefits. How plant can get benefits from these symbiotic interactions? The rhizobiums will penetrate into plant tissue, and then plant the root tissue will be swollen. Okay, so this swollen part will provide shelter to the rhizobiums. Okay, and then apart from the rhizobium get shelter from the plants, the plant also will supply to these bacteria or rhizobiums with sugar in the form of glucose, carbohydrates, okay, and then fructose, berbagai jenis sugar lah. So this carbon compound can serve as a nutrition to the rhizobiums untuk bakteria ni tadi. Okay. In other hand, the plants will get nutritions from the bacteria. How? The rhizobiums can fix the atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia. So plant require nitrogen in the form of ammonia. Okay. So macam mana kita tanam pokok legumes tu dekat kawasan kelapa sawit, dia boleh suburkan tanah. Sebab kita tahu walaupun the rhizobiums can fix the atmospheric nitrogen, the process happen in the root tissues of legumes. Okay. Sebab apa? When the nitrogens being fixed by the rhizobiums to produce ammoniums, these ammoniums can leach, okay, from root tissue into soil. Okay, so when we plant ataupun we cultivate ataupun kita tanam pokok legumes ni dekat tanah tu daripada tak subur boleh jadi subur. Sebab apa? The nitrogens daripada rhizobiums tu dia akan keluar daripada akar, and then dia akan larut dalam soil solutions. Okay, so that's how symbiotic interactions of bacteria with plant can be utilized to fertilize the soils. Okay, kalau awak belajar, kalau awak ambil biofertilizer, nanti kita akan bincang itu more details. Okay, so tadi kita dah bincang satu transformations of nitrogens from gas to ammonia, okay, by fixation process. Okay, so fixation process will produce ammonia. Then ammonia is a form of nitrogen that can be absorbed by plant and also bacteria. Okay, When this ammonia produced from fixations process being absorbed by plants or bacteria, the ammonia we call from inorganics will be transformed into organic. Okay, or we call the process is assimilation process. Okay, faham tak? Yang pertama tadi proses adalah conversions of nitrogen gas to ammonia. Second process, ammonia will be absorbed by plant or bacteria for their nutrition. Okay, so langkah kedua ni adalah the transformations of ammonium or nitrogen from inorganic to organic forms. Okay, sebab apa? Bila ammonia tu absorbed by the plants, the ammoniums will be incorporated into plant structural tissue. Okay, either to form chlorosis or amino acid ataupun nucleic acids. Okay, faham tak? Yang pertama tadi fixation process conversions gases nitrogens to ammonia. Yang kedua assimilations adalah proses conversions of ammonia to organic nitrogens. Okay, ammonifications or mineralizations. Silap ya, dia punya circles ni hanya fokus dekat fixations. Nanti saya ubah juga. Yang apa? Assimilations ni adalah dekat sini. Okay, yang ada organic, yang ada lembu dengan pokok ni. Okay, and then langkah ketiga ataupun proses cycle yang ketiga adalah mineralizations and ammonifications. Ammonifications ataupun mineralizations ada apa maksud dia? Conversions of organic nitrogens into inorganic nitrogens ataupun conversions of organic nitrogens to ammonia. Okay, so tadi saya ulang lagi. First process fixations gases to ammonia. Second process assimilations ammonia to organic nitrogens. Second process ammonifications or mineralizations organic nitrogens to inorganic nitrogens or organic nitrogens to ammonia. Okay, so this process happen when the plant residue or animal residue decomposed by organisms or bacteria. Okay, so this process done by decomposer. So can you relate the importance of bacteria in nitrogen cycle? Okay, setiap proses dalam nitrogen cycles ni involve bacteria. Sebagai contoh, kalau awak ingat lagi, nitrogen fixations dia ada 3 proses, biological, physical, environmental ataupun industrial. Bacteria involve dalam biological process of conversions gases nitrogens to ammonia. Langkah kedua, assimilations. Assimilations pun involve bacteria. Okay, sebab apa? First process tadi dah convert nitrogen to ammonia. Ammonia available for plant nutrition and also for bacteria nutrition also as well. Okay, and then the third cycles ammonifications also involve bacteria because bacteria can also decompose the organic matter into inorganic matter. Okay, and then cycles yang keempat adalah nitrifications. Okay, so nanti saya ubah, saya edit balik. Yang circles ni fokus hanya dekat fixation, saya lupa nak ubah dekat bahagian yang ni. Okay, langkah keempat adalah nitrifications. Tadi ammonia in mineralizations process, organic nitrogens converted to ammonia. So ammonia can be absorbed by plant or bacteria or microorganisms, or it can undergo nitrification process. Okay, So what is nitrification process? Nitrification process is conversions of ammoniums into nitrates. Okay. So in the form of nitrates, nitrogen also can be absorbed by the plant. Okay. But nitrate also can be converted into nitrates. Okay, by bacteria also. Okay, faham tak? Daripada ammonia, daripada organic matter tadi, dia boleh diubah kepada ammonia. Dekat sini, microorganisms or bacteria involved in conversions of organic ammonium or organic nitrogens to ammoniums. Conversions of ammoniums into nitrate also involve bacterial process. Okay, so bacteria will take ammoniums and make nitrogen of ni apa? Nitrates. Okay, nitrates can be reduced by bacteria to produce nitrates. Okay, faham tak? So nitrifications involve two stage of or two types of process. First, reductions to nitrate, and then nitrate will further reduce to nitrate. Okay, so both process involve bacteria. Okay, and then from nitrate, the nitrogens can be absorbed by plant. Okay, because nitrogen also available in the form of nitrate for plant nutrition. Okay, but nitrate also can undergo denitrifications process. Okay, what is mean denitrifications process? Conversions of nitrates to nitrogen gas. Okay. Okay tak? Saya rasa saya berhenti setakat ni dululah. Boleh ke nak sambung sampai 4.30? Macam mana? Ada yang nak berhenti? Kalau nak berhenti cakap je, saya okey je.
Berhenti kot doktor.
Berhenti ya? Okey. So ingat saya selalu